All right, Canada Post, a big announcement today that they are ceasing door-to-door service. They're going to be cutting jobs, and many people are wondering, is this the beginning of the end for Canada Post, or should it be turned around and be made a profitable company? Other countries like the UK have changed their postal service. What should happen in Canada? It's time to find out as we go on the money for that debate. Joining me from Toronto is Ben Dacus. He is a senior policy analyst with C.D. Howe Institute, and beside him is the United Steelworkers economist Erin Weir. Ben Dacus, the numbers from Canada Post, they lost $108 million in the first quarter this year. People are sending millions and millions of fewer packages. Is the way out here cutting home delivery, cutting services, and raising costs of the stamp? Is that the way out?
Not really. All it really does is kick the can further down the road. We've seen price increases before, and we've seen service cuts before, and look at the situation we're in now. These cuts, these price hikes, they don't address the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is the monopoly provision. And when you have a monopoly provider, it's just not going to provide the right kind of services that Canadians want.
You think privatization is the answer?
Well, not full-bore privatization right away. That's just not going to work. What we need to really think about is ways to create some form of competition, and that can involve public sector employees as well, bidding alongside private sector employees for the right to pick up and deliver mail. It's a tried and true method, and it's the way to eventually and gradually move towards a privatized operation.
That's kind of the UK model. What do you think, Erin?
Well, the reason that postal systems are public services or public enterprises in most of the world is that they are natural monopolies. If you can imagine having overlapping, competing networks of post offices and mailboxes, that would entail massive duplication and a waste of resources. So that's why they're typically set up as a public system. I think Ben actually recognizes that, and that's why he's proposing to maintain a single unified monopoly postal system, but to just contract out bits and pieces. I guess my question is, if you're only contracting out bits and pieces, how do you really get the supposed magic of the market to organize the network more efficiently? I really see this contracting out as kind of a backdoor way to cut the pay of postal workers.
Yeah, but so what's the answer? I mean, when people are saying, all right, how does this work? People are sending millions of fewer packages, the price of stamps are going up, this thing's losing money. There's one report said it could lose $1 billion by 2020. Erin, faced with a changing world, look, the music business had to change. The record stores got hurt. Bookstores are having the same issue. What is the future for something like Canada Post?
Well, I would just want to challenge this figure of $1 billion of projected annual loss. The way the Conference Board got to that number was by starting from an assumption that Canada Post would lose $250 million in 2012. In fact, Canada Post turned a slight profit in that year. So I don't think the situation is quite as dire as has been.
Over $100 million this quarter, to be fair.
Well, that's right, and we'll see what the fourth quarter of this year brings. I do think there is a big challenge in terms of reduced letter mail volumes, and I think the solution to that is to look at the infrastructure Canada Post has and other things that we could do with it that would be economically useful. I think one option that has been extremely successful in other advanced economies would be postal banking, to actually provide financial services through the postal outlets that are all over the country that could provide a really good substitute for branch banking services. Many post offices around the world get a majority of their revenue by selling financial services. We've seen post offices in Canada already using some electronic bill payment, providing money orders, and I say, why not allow people to set up bank accounts at their post offices?
That's a different, but what do you think of that? I mean, is that the business that Canada Post should be in, Ben, competing against the banks?
No, this is a very dangerous idea, because when you create these government backstop financial institutions, to the extent that we're talking about with postal banking, that creates major problems that you see with organizations like Farm Credit Canada that are able to outbid private banks because they have the backstopping of the government and are able to issue a lower cost debt. And it's a very dangerous idea where they go out and undercut banks, and it's a very, very dangerous idea that puts the public at risk.
Well, we've got an oligopoly in our banking sector, and it'd actually be good to see the chartered banks undercut a little bit by a postal banking system. I think that would be a positive thing for Canadian consumers.
Well, that's all besides the point. The real issue is more fundamental reforms that we need within the postal operations itself. And the real solution to the postal operations is to find more efficient ways to provide the pickup and delivery. And Erin's right. Postal services are a natural monopoly. And that's why we want to maintain some form of centralized operations and contracting individual routes and allowing private sector operators to pick up some routes that are profit making on their own, but then
is that
being able to pick up rural routes.
Is that the slow end of Canada Post as you chip it off and privatize it, Ben?
Well, what you do with, say, rural routes is that we accept that we need to have these rural areas have postal services. We can't leave these rural communities with the only way of connecting to the rest of the world through carrier pigeon or smoke signals. These folks need mail services. And the best way to provide that sort of service and have it subsidized by the general public is to do it through an explicit subsidy rather than putting the cost of those rural services through the universal service mandate onto urban consumers and onto businesses. And it's just going to create this death spiral where the cost of mail gets higher and higher. Urban consumers stop using it, and we just have to raise the prices again.
All right. Guys, unfortunately, I got to leave it there. But you know what? I appreciate that. I feel like we're going to cut you guys off, and it feels like kind of consistent with what we're talking about with the mail service.
We'll come back. You a letter,
we'll come back. Send me a note about it, Aaron.
I'll send you an email.
Erin Weir and Ben Dacus, thanks so much to both of you.